So what do you think are like the trends or stories that you're going to be keeping a close eye on here in the second half of 2021?
Will the pace of residential work continue? It's really hot right now in a lot of parts of the country. So that's helping business along a lot. Be prepared if things do slow down somewhat in the second half.
You heard it here first. HVAC contractors, don't buy the Lamborghini with your newfound cash. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Business Savvy, our educational podcast for field service business owners. I am your host, Nick Worker. Now, we know that a lot of our followers are working in the HVAC industry, and if you're one of those followers, you're going to want to pay close attention to this episode because today we'll be speaking with Ted Craig, who is the business management editor at the ACHR News, which is an organization that offers the latest in trends, products, and industry insight for HVAC contractors. Ted, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Well, I very much appreciate you being here. So can you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and the news organization that you work for?
Sure. So ACHR News, which stands for Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration News, has been around since, I can't get the exact date, but I know it's been since the Great Depression. So it's been around for a long time. We're headquartered outside of Detroit in Troy, Michigan. We've been in the Detroit area the entire time. I've been in the Detroit area the entire time of my life, pretty much.
That's funny.
I grew up here. And prior to joining ACHR in 2019, I spent almost 20 years covering auto retail and finance. So there are some differences, but I see actually more and more a lot of similarities between the two businesses. So that's my background, and that's our background. We're a national publication. I'm sure you said that already, but I want to note it once again. So it's like, 'cause some people always ask, where are you? It's all over the country.
That's awesome. So it feels corny to keep talking about this, but listen, it's like a recent breakup, right? We just broke up with COVID-19. We're not seeing other people yet, but we've seen a lot of unexpected things happen in the world since the pandemic, right?
Right.
So were there any news developments in the HVAC field over the past year that really surprised you?
Well, I think the biggest surprise for everybody was after the initial shutdown in March, how quickly and how strongly the industry bounced back. By that summer, business was booming. And part of that was that people were spending more time at home. Part of that was that people were getting stimulus checks from the government. And part of that was that people weren't going on vacation. So suddenly they had money to invest in their homes, and all that came together to create a booming business for a lot of HVAC contractors. So much so that, as you know, there are supply shortages all throughout the industry in just about every category you can think of. So I would say the rapid rebound of the industry was the biggest surprise in the past year.
I'm always surprised by that sort of answer, that like it boomed during the pandemic, because it felt like we were never going to recover.
Right.
And as I was asking that question, I was thinking, because we sent everybody home, obviously, that works here for the pandemic when, the shutdown orders happened. But I stayed, I had my own office, and we wore masks, and it was just me and my business partner basically across the way. And we see each other anyway. So we felt that was safe. But I still remember, because we're very close, we have a good business relationship with the guy who does all the HVAC for this. He actually is in this industrial park that we're in, but he did the filters for us in the HVAC system. And there were a lot of changes and updates that needed to be made for businesses that wanted to essential businesses, especially. We were deemed an essential business, but
right.
that wanted to remain open, HVAC was a major concern for them. But I find it interesting that, like, yeah, I didn't get to go on vacation, so I might as well update the air conditioning system in my house if I got to stay home and be uncomfortable in the hot summer and can't go anywhere. Um, so do you think that there were any long-term effects that the pandemic will have on the HVAC industry moving forward?
Well, it's funny. I just saw a chart the other day about how spending has pretty much returned to where it was a year and a half ago. So people have stopped going to the grocery store again, and they're now going out to eat now that they're vaccinated. So I think a lot of the attempts to sort of say, well, this has changed permanently, or this is going to be different, are premature to an extent in every area post-COVID. But I do think there are two things that are probably going to be driving a lot of the HVAC business going forward, at least to an extent. One is the move that increased concern about IAQ, that people now are thinking more about what they're breathing in. And even though, they're not necessarily going to be dealing with another pandemic anytime soon, we would hope, they are thinking about, just in general, they've gotten thinking more about hygiene in the air, as it were. And so you hear a lot about increased higher rated filters and things like that people seem concerned about. And that probably, at least for some time, will probably continue to be a thought in people's minds. And the other issue is, as we spoke about working from home, there's all sorts of interesting surveys out there about how many people wish to continue working from home at least part of the time. I saw a survey that says something like half of the people would quit their jobs if they had to go back in the office. But I also saw a survey that said half the people go out and sit in their car at least once a day to get away from their families after working from home. So it's still uncertain how much people will be in their office or not in their office. But either way, if people are working from home, even just a few days a week, let's say 3 days a week becomes the normal, they'll have an effect on both residential and commercial contractors, and even new home contractors, because you'll see that on the residential side, people will continue possibly to want to upgrade their HVAC, maybe put a mini split in the room that they did not have, that doesn't heat or cool to their interest, to their comfort level. So the residential side will continue, and the new home side, you might see people building homes going forward with dedicated office space or other spaces, gym space, what have you. So you might see an increased need for HVAC, different HVAC. People might want more cooling in a home gym than they would in the rest of their house. So they might invest in that. On the commercial side, the challenge will be that if you are having people in the office still a few days a week, but not 5 days a week, how do you provide heating and cooling for those folks at a rate that doesn't put a large burden on the building's operators? If you have, say, half the staff in an area that you had before, you don't need to cool it to the same level necessarily, because they're not expelling as much heat, but you're still going to need to cool it to some level. So VRF and other technology are going to play a role there.
I was nodding so heavily because obviously I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do a lot of things, but so now my wife works exclusively from home. She got a new job and she works. We had an office, right? It was just like where we put like a small desk and like our computer that we use for our leisure. But now she's like officially working from home. They sent her a big computer, a monitor, or this. I had to get a whole L-shaped desk and all this. But she doesn't really like air conditioning. I like it really cold. So for myself during the pandemic, because I couldn't go to the gym, I bought like a weight bench and a bunch of weights. I put it in my basement, and when I bought my house, there was central air upstairs, but there's no central air downstairs, and it's hot, and I'm not trying to sweat. So there's a lot to be said. Like, you're not going to the gym anymore. You might want to upgrade your HVAC system to cool the part of your basement where you're getting sweaty while you're working out. At least for me, I can understand that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Another factor I was just thinking of as we were talking too was that as you and I are speaking on this video conference, more and more people are doing that all the time. You're not going to want a loud HVAC system kicking in either in the office or at home. So noise reduction might be another issue going forward, and improving duct work. But yeah, it's stuff people weren't thinking about 2 years ago, except possibly some very wealthy, people working in very large luxury homes. And now it's going to be typical.
Definitely. And like, you're working from home and your loud air conditioner, because you're sweating, is kicking on, and it's in the same room, and you don't have the quiet duct work for totally, and it's disruptive. And to me, like, you're right. It kind of screams unprofessionalism, and you don't really want that, especially if, that you're trying to make a vocation of doing something like this, which is cool to think about. So this is kind of cool, because I'm curious, because I obviously don't keep up to date on like the technology of actual HVAC systems, but a lot of us have become a lot more dependent on technology during the pandemic, like we're talking about. Have you seen that be the case for a lot of the HVAC businesses that you cover?
Well, you started to see more people doing using video for a pre-visit. Sometimes even not even going to the person's home. There were people who would do a virtual visit, and maybe it was something that the homeowner could just do themselves. Let's say a filter change. That became something that they might do. I think that could be something going forward that you'll still see more of, is more use of video in the HVAC business. You can even use it for things like a pre-visit, have the homeowner go into their basement and show the dispatcher what's down there, even in terms of like the dispatcher going, okay, could you move those boxes out of the way so our technician will have faster access to your equipment. But video is definitely something, because really, the thing about HVAC is you still have to physically go there most of the time. So you're limited in what you can do, although there is getting to be more and more remote access on both the commercial and residential side, and that's a trend that will probably continue. People were already coming out with that before the pandemic, but that becomes an issue of how quickly it catches on with consumers. But definitely the use of video, I think, is going to continue and grow going forward.
Yeah, I imagine like that was probably really paramount to like staying afloat, is like, especially if you're having an HVAC problem, but you're also, really scared of COVID. And there were people with some valid concerns about not wanting to contract a virus, which I totally understand. So having like a virtual visit where it's like, hey, I can show you, do like a FaceTime type thing, or like a video conference type thing, I imagine was very helpful to a lot of businesses and to a lot of people who needed help during that time. Hopefully we're getting through it, but man, so besides that, what are some of the biggest challenges that HVAC business owners seem to be facing these days when it comes to like the training and management of their staff?
Well, the biggest issue continues to be just hiring staff, just getting people hired. There's just not enough people going into technical fields, and you're starting to have a lot of people retiring. It places a demand on the business where they have to replace these experienced technicians, and for a long time, it's starting to change, but for a long time, people weren't necessarily going into the trades. So that continues to be the biggest issue, is finding and retaining good staff, because of course, once you have them trained and everything else, the risk is always that they'll go somewhere else in pursuit of more money. The turnover is extremely high in the HVAC business. So that is an ongoing struggle, finding and retaining talent. As far as training goes, of course, during the pandemic, you had issues with not being able to get your staff together for in-person training. A lot of people turn to technology with that. Virtual reality is becoming a more commonly used tool in training, and so that helps. I think going forward, an issue is going to be that as the equipment becomes smarter, you're going to have some issues with, you have people who have good mechanical skills, but they're also going to need possibly more digital skills. And if dealing with a smart thermostat or some sort of control unit on even a piece of residential equipment, it's going to become more and more complicated. You saw that in the auto industry. You saw that, as computers become more and more common in cars, there was some issues with finding technicians to work on those. And it's starting to become more that way in the HVAC business, I think, and going to continue.
That's such a cool comparison. And, I make a vocation of like helping HVAC companies run their business, and I don't really think about the actual turnover of technicians. But as you were saying that, I was trying to think, like, do I know anybody who became an HVAC technician? And I know one person who went and became an HVAC technician. He's a great guy. I'm sure he's a great HVAC technician. I haven't spoken to him in a while. But yeah, you don't really see people making a vocation of that anymore. And it's funny. So we have a scholarship that we give out to like vocational schools. We have a few scholarships that we do for Ringside, but we have like I think there's a high school scholarship we do the vocational school scholarship, and then there's like a young entrepreneurs one, which kind of goes alongside of like, field service entrepreneurship, right? But yeah, I mean, anybody that I know that even went into a trade, went into like a union to be like an iron worker or a steam fitter or a plumber. Like, I know a lot of plumbers. I know a lot of contractors. I know a lot of guys who do drywall, but I don't know many HVAC people. And it's funny because it's actually a good paying, great job to have. But I am surprised by the turnover rate. Why do you think that there's such a high turnover rate?
Well, I had one contractor explain to me that there's a lot of people who just don't want to be crawling around in crawl spaces or up in an attic when it's 100 and some degrees. It's a fairly physically demanding profession. Plumber. Sometimes, obviously, plumbers have to deal with some pretty dirty stuff, so that part's not attractive. But you're working in a bathroom that's just a normal room of the house, and whereas if you're an HVAC contract or HVAC technician, like I said, you might be up in the attic, you're crawling around a crawl space, you're down in the basement.
True.
It's pretty physically demanding work, and so that, I think, causes some people to maybe stay away from or leave the business a little early. Obviously, there are tremendous rewards. I talk to technicians all the time, and they really enjoy their work. The one I hear most often, every technician that I speak to who talks about what they like the best about being an HVAC technician, is that every day is different. Every job is different. So it can be appealing, and if it's presented that way, I think it's more, it makes it more attractive. But really, you're going into an attic in the middle of the summer when the heat is out. That part is less attractive, I think, to people. So you just got to kind of try to present the positives over the negatives if you're trying to attract people to the business.
Definitely understandable. Okay, so that makes it a little. It makes a lot more sense to me now.
Yeah.
So I like it cold. So
Yeah.
I appreciate my HVAC techs out there who try to keep me cold when I'm sweating. But I was reading, so I saw that you recently wrote a column about how HVAC contractors will need to focus more on branding in order to
Yeah.
reach more new customers. So can you talk a little bit more about this for our listeners and explain how strong branding can result in a better return on their digital marketing? But can you also explain what branding is?
Yeah. So branding is basically, getting your name sort of out there in the collective and the collective conscious of consumers. I was thinking about this when you asked about it. There's one HVAC firm in my local market who they advertise. They do a lot of marketing. They do a lot of TV marketing. They do their own commercials. They do a commercial with a trade school that promotes people coming to work for them. So it promotes them as an employer, and it promotes them, keeps their name in mind with consumers. They have very distinctive branding for their trucks. You can recognize them from a distance, and I know because I see them all the time in my subdivision. And the thing is, once you start getting out there more, and people see you more, people see your brand. When they have a problem, they know where they're going to go, who they're going to call. And then it plays into digital marketing, in part because once people start thinking of that brand, they don't just go to the phone book anymore. They go on Google, they type in the name, and it comes up, and then they call them. Well, every time they do that, that improves their search results. So that people know your name, that they know your brand, not just that they're thinking of HVAC repair. Just a search on just a unspecified search for HVAC repair will do you some good because you might come up, but a specific search for your name helps you both immediately and down the road when people are searching for HVAC repair. So the importance of branding is to get your name out there, to get people to think of your name when they need HVAC work of some kind. And that's where the importance of branding is. And it takes a lot of effort because this firm's commercials they're not amateurish. They're very professionally done. And that helps a lot.
And they're not cheap.
And they're not cheap. But you got to spend money to make money, right? It feeds into it. So you really have to have an overall strategy, everything from your trucks to your website to any kind of advertising you're going to do on radio or TV to get through to people's thinking.
When you were making the point about branding, I was thinking about how I find this funny, but like branding to me is so important, not just because I'm in marketing, right? But like there's a trust factor between consumer and like the business. So I know that there are different circumstances for different people, but if you put the money thing aside, right? Say you wanted to buy a car, and the car that you want, you could get for, I don't know, $1,000, right? So you could get this car on Craigslist for $1,000 from a guy, regular guy. Seems nice. Maybe he's a nice guy. Or you can go to the dealership and get the car for $1,500. If money wasn't an issue for you, you would probably go with the dealership. Why? Because they have a reputation to uphold. They probably have a better reputation. You know what you're getting with this company because you can go back there and they to me it's all about trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that when you see an HVAC tech pull up to your house to do work on where you live, something that's important to you, and they have a branded truck, and the tech comes out wearing a uniform, and he's got some official looking papers for you, and a real receipt. Um, that all leads the customer to place their trust in your business, as opposed to somebody who just pulls up in a beat up old truck with equipment falling out of the back, and there's no, like, it's like, did I call this guy or is he just here? you know um so and then you're right, there is the digital marketing aspect to it as well, where it's not somebody just looking for on Google like HVAC business. It's somebody looking for, I don't know, cool guys. That just came to me. That was a cool
Right.
HVAC company that I was talking to recently. Cool guys. I thought that was really funny. Um, so these days, a lot of HVAC businesses might want to expand their services as a way to reach more new customers. So, what are some of the things that these companies should consider before they begin adding things on, like plumbing or electrical work or pest control types of services to their business?
Yeah, I've done articles on quite a few of those things. And, a couple of things you have to look at is some trades are more regulated than others. Plumbing is more regulated than HVAC, and you need more licensing. So you need to know what is involved in that area. Pest control, which I did an article on recently, is heavily regulated because they use poisonous chemicals. That's not a barrier to entry. You don't need a master pest controller the way you need a master plumber, but you are going to need probably different trucks, for example. So you need to know how is the trade you're looking to get into regulated, and do you need any licensing? Do you need any special, equipment or vehicles? That's all going to play a factor. The other thing to consider is, does this added service actually create work for you at a time when you need more work done? So I did an article on, it was actually the opposite way, but chimney sweeps, they still call them chimney sweeps, going and adding some HVAC work to their portfolio. And actually I think it's New Jersey, there's actually now some regulation that you have to have some HVAC training for some chimney work. And for them, it worked because a lot of chimney season is in the fall. Well, that's between the shoulder season for HVAC contractors. It's between the cooling season and the heating season. So that might be something that works out well. Electrical is an obvious one because you're already dealing with electricity. Then there are other things that you can add on. One area that's interesting these days, I was just talking to some folks who did an article on smart thermostats recently. And we're talking about the whole evolving idea of a smart home ecosystem. And there are ways that contractors can get involved in that. If you go to somebody's home and you install a Nest, to use one example, smart thermostat, that same person might be interested in installing a Ring doorbell at their front door. Well, that's the same basic wiring. You could do that. Your technician could do that. So, it's good to look for opportunities like that where there's a minimum amount of additional training, equipment, and things like that, but they can expand your business into new areas. And then you're becoming not just your customer is not just your HVAC customer. That customer is becoming your home customer, and that's sort of what you're looking for. That's the other thing to consider when you're looking at expanding your services is, can you become a one-stop for that person for whatever needs they have? And so that's, what are the opportunities there? That's also something you need to consider.
Those are great ideas. And so I love figuring out new ways to like improve not only like the amount of services that you can offer a customer, but like the overall satisfaction of your customer, because they don't want to hire two different people to do like a Nest thermostat and their HVAC system, and then I got to call somebody to do the Ring doorbell, blah 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 blah. When you become a one-stop shop, not only are you more reliable and you get to make more money, but your customers are happier too. They don't want to have two separate people. They want you to do it, and you get to reap the benefits as well. So I want to talk about this actually. In another piece that you wrote this year, you presented millennials as like as a budding market, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of HVAC companies are, I don't want to say failing, but not really taking advantage of. So can you talk about why HVAC contractors should be focusing more on millennials?
There's a real easy answer to that. If the term millennial is often misused and confused with just meaning a young person. The technical definition of millennial is people like you, born between roughly 1980 and somewhere in the late 90s. Some people will even go up to 2000 or 2001, but either way, that in that time period, the peak of births for that cohort is in 1987, which is 34 years ago. The average age of a first-time home buyer is 34 years old.
I'm getting old.
So that means millennials are now becoming homeowners at a rapid clip. So you want to target to this group because these are going to be your customers, and there are a lot of them. These are going to be the customers for pretty much the rest of your career. Your existing customers are, moving away, or in a lot of markets are probably maybe moving away to a warmer climate, or, passing on. So this is who you're going to be working for pretty much for the rest of your career. And that's why you need to know how to reach them. And the sort of, not everything is going to work the same for every age group either. So you have to figure out how you're going to reach them. One thing is that, for example, Facebook is if you want to reach millennials via social media, that's the way to go. It's the number one social media, Facebook and Instagram for millennials. So that might be where you want to spend more of your advertising dollars, and maybe less on, definitely less on like newspaper or print, than previous generations. But that's not to say that you should necessarily discard all traditional advertising either. Don't just say, well, if I want to reach millennials, I just have to go all online. One thing that was interesting during the pandemic is that people were stuck at home, they were bored, and mailers became much more effective because the mail shows up, something to do for 10, 15 minutes, go through the mail, go through that Val pack and see what's in there. So you need to make sure that you're spending correctly to reach this crucial and growing consumer group.
You are a smart guy, Ted. And for anybody listening to this who's an HVAC contractor and you're scared of millennials, we're not so bad, I promise. And it's funny because I probably in my lifetime I've purchased a newspaper 4 times, and I've never subscribed to a newspaper. But I know that I'm getting old because I really, really love car magazines. And I don't have a subscription yet, but I'm sure I'm going to end up buying a subscription. My father-in-law has a subscription to Motor Trend, and that's how I know I'm getting old. Is every time I go over there, I'm like, he gives me my copy because he already read it of Motor Trend, and I sit there for like a half hour with a cup of coffee, and I'm reading my magazine, and I look forward to it. And I'm like, man, I'm really getting up there. But yeah, you're so right. Is like the way that consumers sort of like purchase these days or interact with companies is so much different than it used to be.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you were a genius if you figured out that if you just changed your name to like AAA plumbing and you ended up first in the yellow pages, that was how you were going to get customers. And now there's a sort of a new genius of marketing. It's the companies out there who are advertising on Instagram and Facebook and maybe TikTok. You know, I personally, I'm not a big TikTok guy, but it's very popular.
Yeah.
So you'd be remiss not to look into these things, because there's just an opportunity for you to service a giant section of the market. So obviously, a big part of being a successful HVAC company is offering a great experience for customers. So what does the HVAC consumer seem to care about most these days?
Well, they care about comfort, and that's still number one. You know, everything else we talked about is important to them. They care a lot about comfort, and they care a lot about energy efficiency. You know, that's another thing that's getting to be an issue with people. It's a way to reduce their bills, as much as, you know, they're concerned about the environment, but it's also about, it's double green, right? It's green for the environment and green in their wallets. So energy efficiency is a concern, but comfort is still king. That's, you know, how quickly can you get them from a warm house to a cool house? And you know, that remains it. But people also care, you know, like you were talking about, they care about brands. They care about whom they're doing business with a lot. So you really need to protect your brand and make sure that you have a good reputation, especially online. People care a lot about reviews, so you need to keep an eye on those. So those are a couple of things that I would say comfort, reputation, and long-term energy savings and controlling costs are some of their biggest concerns on the residential side. Which is
I gotta say, I've loved talking to you, because I didn't, obviously, you know, you want to do a good job for your customer. You want to go there and make sure that, you know, you're speedy and things work, and, you know, you're not there ripping out the wall for like 2 days unnecessarily. But you know, I didn't even think of energy efficiency, and that's something that people might be really focused on, you know, and if that's something that you can provide and tell your customer, especially, like, hey, I'm going to do this, it's a lot more energy efficient, it's more cost effective for you, and it's better for the environment. If that's truly what people care about, because I know I care about that, if somebody were to tell me that, I'd be like, hey, that sounds great, thank you, I appreciate you letting me know that too. That's, you know, I feel better about this purchase decision, and also it's a little lighter on my wallet, which I definitely appreciate.
Which is why it's a good idea to keep up with all the rebates and credits that are available from utilities and from states and so forth. So you can present to your customers during the sales process, well, you know, if you get this, you can get a credit for that and a rebate on this, and it'll lower your cost, upfront cost, and your long-term costs.
You're so right. So I recently I bought a new lawnmower, and while I was there buying a lawnmower, my wife wanted me to buy an electric like edge trimmer, weed whacker, whatever you want to call it, because she doesn't like my gas powered one. It scares her, but she also wants to trim the lawn. So I buy the thing. And while I'm buying it, you know, I wasn't really happy about it. I already have one. And the salesman said to me, well, you know, it's a lot better for the environment, and it's also, you get this rebate. So all you have to do is, here's a sticker, right? You get a $20 rebate on your, and I was like, wow, that's really great. So I felt a little bit better about it, because I'm not wasting all this gas with my gas crazy old weed whacker. My wife is happy. That's number two. And number three, I get a rebate, and I'm saving the environment a little bit. I don't know if I actually am. Maybe he sold me the Brooklyn Bridge, but I definitely felt better about my decision. So you're totally right. And I want to finish with this, right? So 2021, we're like halfway through, right? It's the 18th of June as this is happening. I hope that's the right today's date, because it could be wrong. I don't know. Okay. I don't know what day it is, man. So what do you think are like the trends or stories that you're going to be keeping a close eye on here in the second half of 2021?
You know, the second half is going to be interesting because the question will be, what will people will the pace of residential work continue? You know, it's really hot right now in a lot of parts of the country. So that's helping business along a lot. Consumers are still sitting on a lot of cash. There was I saw a study recently that round of stimulus checks, a lot of it went right into people's savings accounts. So, you know, it's hot and they have money. So spending should continue probably through the summer. But what happens after that? You know, cruise lines are opening up again. Airline travel was at its highest point since pre-pandemic last week. Are people going to continue investing in their home at the same pace that they were before? They're likely to continue to invest because of, as we discussed, the shift to work from home and other things from home, but maybe not at the same pace. So are you prepared for things to maybe slow down in the second half for residential contractors? And the flip side of that, if you're doing like commercial work, there might be a little more of that, you know, coming up in the second half as things open up more. So that's a possibility. But, you know, you sort of have to be prepared that, you know, the good times are good now, take advantage of them, but be prepared if things do slow down somewhat in the second half. You know, just because probably you can't keep this pace up for forever.
You heard it here first. HVAC contractors, don't buy the Lamborghini with your newfound cash. Save some for a rainy day. Get the well, I don't know what's cheaper than get a nice Toyota Camry instead. But also better for the environment, like we're talking about. But Ted, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. A lot of interesting stuff that we talked about, and I really appreciate your time and your insights. They were so valuable, and it's been great.
All right, great. Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. For anybody watching, all of Ted's information and his company's information on how you can find out more will be listed in the description. And Ted, I'll email you to get all that anything you want to put in there.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.